The Jags took Anton Harrison with the 28th pick last year, and if we did a redraft, I think he'd go a lot higher, probably somewhere in the early teens. He showed elite upside as a pass protector and really looks like the complete package in that phase. Like most rookies, it wasn't perfectly consistent, but he improved significantly as the year went on, and he has the combination of physical traits and advanced technique to be a shutdown right tackle. His anchor is rock solid. He faced bull rushes and speed to power as often as any of the rookie O-linemen that I've watched, and he had very few losses. He has quick feet to mirror pass rushers up and down the arc and the ability to recover when he gets out of position. He has almost 35-inch arms, so he can establish first contact and separate himself from defenders, but he's also extremely skilled with his hands for a rookie. He's very technically advanced when it comes to hand fighting and sort of playing the chess match to counter different pass rushing moves. So he still needs to put it all together consistently, but he has a chance to be a top 5 pass blocking tackle, and it's looking like one of the best picks from the first round last year. I want to start by talking about his anchor. This is the area that rookie offensive linemen struggle with most frequently, but you can't say that for Anton Harrison. He almost never lost to power in his first year, and he faced a lot of bull rushes over the course of the season. The scouting report for most rookie offensive linemen is that they need to add play strength, but Anton Harrison is already strong as hell. He can absorb power at the point of contact. There isn't a lot of knockback when pass rushers land their punch, and he's very strong with his hands. He's got an impactful two-hand punch to meet power with power. He has a flexible lower half, so he can set his anchor, redirect bull rushes into the ground, and as he gets even stronger, which is probably going to happen, it's only going to improve. There are some times, and you'll see this even on reps that he won, where you'd like him to get his hands inside more consistently. I think having a tighter punch and really shooting his hands inside will allow him to set a wider pocket. There's sometimes he's a little bit too far outside on the shoulder pads, which isn't a great point of resistance against power rushes. If you have a really firm two-hand punch, a lot of times your hands will slip off if you're landing them high and outside, but that didn't even result in a lot of losses. It was just less clean wins, and overall his ability to consistently stonewall bull rushes was extremely impressive. I also like to see his ability to recover when he doesn't win initially or doesn't have a clean start to the rep. This play against Nico Autry is some high-level stuff. Autry has one of the better long arms in the NFL. He gives a hesitation stutter step to start out the play and kind of frees Anton Harrison. He shoots his inside hand right on the collar, establishes first contact. So this position right here is not ideal for Anton Harrison. Autry's established separation. Harrison can't reach into his frame to counter the rush. So from this point, he retreats with a full hop step to reset the point of engagement. He's giving a little bit of ground early so that he can set a firm anchor just a couple yards back. But then in that same motion, as he's resetting his base, he uses kind of a forklift technique with the inside hand to release contact from the long arm. As his feet are in the air, he's disconnecting from the long arm and then refitting his punch once he lands on the ground. Now, a common theme with the Jags offense, which you'll see throughout this video, is that the ball comes out extremely quick. Trevor Lawrence had the 4th lowest time to throw in the NFL last year, and that's not even really a Trevor Lawrence stat. You can see he still had a relatively high average depth of target. The Jags just didn't trust their offensive line at all to hold up in pass pro, so it was a ton of 3 and 1-step drops. So there's a lot of plays going through Anton Harrison's tape where you can only really evaluate the first 3 seconds of the rep. He isn't being asked to hold up for very long in pass pro, and when you look at his stats, I think that explains the discrepancy between like pressure rate and PFF pass blocking grade. He allowed the 9th lowest pressure rate among NFL tackles at 4.06%, but his PFF pass blocking grade ranked 57th. And when you look at the other top tackles in terms of pressure rate allowed, you can see Anton Harrison's 9th, Cam Robinson is 10th. There's a lot of plays where they might lose in pass pro and they'll get negatively graded by PFF, but the ball is out so quickly it doesn't actually result in a pressure because it's not speeding up the quarterback's process. So you'll continue to see examples of what I'm talking about, but just wanted to kind of explain how the Jags offense was set up last year. Another example here of not necessarily winning early, but working to establish good hand position throughout the rep. The edge rusher, Yetur Gross-Matos, establishes first contact, but again, Harrison forklifts the inside hand, releases contact, and in the same motion, he lands a firm outside hand punch and completely stalls the rush. He really only had 2 losses to power all season. Both of them came to Zadarius Smith, and they were both a result of him being late with his hands, giving the rusher access to his frame. This first one, you can see the problem really starts with his pass set. He clicks clicks his heels in his second step. That gets him off rhythm, off balance with the rest of his footwork. He isn't squared up with the bull rush when Smith gets his hands inside, and he loses his footing and has to do the splits. Right here, he's late with his hands. Smith goes speed to power, opens up the inside shoulder, and gets a pressure. But even in that matchup, you also saw some impressive recoveries from Anton Harrison. This play was almost a loss. Again, he's late with his hands, so he gives Smith access to his frame, but then he's able to hop step, reset the point of engagement, access his anchor, and wash him out to the inside. So out of the rookie offensive linemen that I've watched, the only two that I would say didn't struggle with power are Darnell Wright and Anton Harrison, and Wright's like 330 pounds, so they pretty much never even tried bull rushes against him. Anton Harrison was getting speed to power pretty frequently and just eating it for lunch. He also has really quick feet, explosive pass sets, wide pocket range. He can recover depth when he gets beat initially. This play, Leonard Floyd kind of beats him off the snap, but he's able to open his hips, recover depth, flush him upfield. Trevor Lawrence has time to step up and get it to Calvin Ridley. There were still some times he got beat around the corner. Their tackles weren't taking very deep pass sets. Like I said, it's mostly 1 and 3 step drops, so they weren't being asked to hold up for very long, but he does have a habit sometimes of stopping his feet at the top of his set, and he'll give up some late pressure around the edge. But then you combine that foot speed with extremely advanced hand usage, especially for a rookie. He has all the tools in his bag to counter every single move. He can be quick and aggressive with his hands. He can be patient, wait for the rusher to declare their move, and then counter it. His hand usage is as good as I've seen for a rookie offensive lineman over the last few years. This play against Danico Autry is an example of a perfectly timed two-hand punch. Autry's using a cross chop where he chops the outside hand with his inside hand. Harrison does a good job initially of not giving Autry anything to hit, so the cross chop's gonna land on air, but then he gathers his hands, times up this two-hand punch right with the downswing of Autry's inside arm. It looks like his outside foot kind of gets tripped by ETN releasing on the swing route, so that's why he falls down, but still a perfectly timed and synced punch here by Anton Harrison. He's really patient when pass rushers try to bait him into overextending and getting off balance. Right here, Kyle Van Noy uses a ghost move where he's going to flash the inside hand, act like he's stabbing the chest. He wants Harrison to fully commit to this first move and lean into a two-hand punch, and then he can dip around the edge, but Harrison just slightly leans back to ensure that the stab move can't make contact. He keeps his outside hand down and back by his waist, so it's protected, but he's also loading up for when he does land his punch. And then once Van Noy tries to dip around the edge, then he lands his punch, does a good job moving his feet to seal him out of the pocket. Another example here against Harold Landry. Again, he's going to fake the stab with the inside hand. Harrison slightly leans back. He's not even really moving back. He's basically just like sucking in his stomach. He pulls back his hands, so if it is a cross chop, there's nothing to latch onto. And then once Landry fully commits to the speed rush, it's a continuous motion to load up and land his punch. You see this pretty frequently with this type of move where the pass rusher will lower their head and really try to dip around the corner. A lot of times tackles land their punch on the face mask because that's where they're expecting the chest to be. So could definitely refine that hand placement, but a good job of not holding on to the face mask and avoiding the penalty. In the Bills matchup, you saw some similar kind of techniques against different moves. Right here, Von Miller's using a double swipe. Initially, Harrison has his hands loaded, ready to punch, but once he identifies the double swipe, he pulls back the outside hand, causes Von Miller to miss, and then while he's in the downswing of his move, he's not going to be protecting his frame. So again, continuous motion to pull the hands back and then land your punch. Right here, Leonard Floyd hits him with a double swipe. Again, pulls back the outside hand, double swipe whiffs. That back and forth motion with his hands protects his outside hand from getting swiped, but it also generates more power when he does punch. So it's just set, retreat with the hands, punch on the downswing, flush him upfield. And then same thing here against the cross chop. Hands are up, active in striking position. Floyd gets into the cross chop. Harrison retracts his outside hand, lands his punch in the same motion when Floyd isn't protecting his frame. You'll also see Harrison bait pass rushers similar to how they try to bait him with like a ghost move, for example. There are some really good examples of this in his matchup with Cam Jordan. Jordan uses the cross chop as frequently as any pass rusher in the NFL. NFL. You see Harrison gets into his set. He gives a subtle flash with the outside hand. That tells Jordan, okay, he's outside hand punching. This is the time to land the cross chop, bend around the corner. But that hand flash just invites the move. Harrison withdraws with the outside hand, lands a two-hand punch in a continuous motion. Next play, again, he flashes the outside hand. This time Cam Jordan's using a double swipe, but it's the same effect. He draws out the move. The swipe doesn't have anything to land on, and he comes back with a two-hand punch. This play against Atlanta starts off almost exactly the same. He's baiting out a double swipe with his outside hand. So he flashes. Arnold Ebiketie starts to get into a double swipe, but he can see that Anton Harrison's withdrawing the outside hand. So he transitions into a spin move, but Harrison does a great job here of not overcommitting to the speed rush. He's got his inside hand activated, ready to catch that inside spin. He's able to counter it with the hand, but then slide his feet, stay in front of the rush, and seal off the B gap. And then final clip, I know we've been on this for a while, but there's so many examples on his tape of just textbook hand usage. He shows the outside hand, draws out the double swipe. This play, he's really using a defined circle punch technique. He isn't just out and then back with the outside hand. It's a full circular motion. So he's protecting it, but then the landing point of that motion, he's ready to punch and protect the outside. Like I said, his biggest problem when it comes to speed rushes is just stopping his feet at the top of his set. He obviously knows, or at least has a good idea of how long Trevor Lawrence is going to be holding onto the ball. So a lot of his losses to the outside didn't actually end up resulting in pressures. It's still something I think you can be critical of, but understanding the context of the Jags offense, you know, if a rusher's going that far outfield and taking that wide of an arc around the edge, he understands that by the time they close in on the quarterback, Lawrence has gotten rid of the ball most likely. Another area where I think there's room for improvement is inside counters. He definitely has the natural ability to be good in that phase, but you need to see it more consistently. Textbook rep here against Jadeveon Clowney. He's starting his rush outside. Harrison comes in with an outside hand punch, but at that moment, Clowney plants his foot, counters inside through the B gap, and this is just really quick reaction time. Great technique by Anton Harrison. Even though he's extended the outside hand and he's in kind of a compromised position, he's so quick to regroup with the inside hand, catch that counter, and then so many tackles in this situation drop step with the inside foot where they're just stepping all the way back, opening the gate through the B gap. When you get an inside counter, that's just kind of the natural instinct for most players, but you can see Harrison takes a full lateral step with the left foot. It basically looks like a reverse of his pass set. So he's resisting with his upper body, strong inside hand, but he's also mirroring the counter with his feet and staying in front of it. But then this play, Clowney's using a similar kind of approach. He's initially threatening upfield, then he counters inside through the B gap. Harrison gets his inside hand swiped, so he isn't able to provide resistance with his hands. And then he does what I was talking about, where instead of stepping back inside with his left foot, he drop steps, opens the gate. That gives Clowney an edge to attack, and he's able to pressure the quarterback. This play against Nick Bosa, initially it's a speed rush. Harrison gives an aggressive two-hand punch, but he's leaning too far forward, so to redirect inside, that's a really tough ask. And when Bosa transitions to the spin, you can see Harrison's inside hand is pinned back. It's unavailable to try to catch this counter. He doesn't have a square base to step back inside with his left foot, so Bosa's able to get a pressure. And then final inside counter, Calais Campbell uses one of his favorite moves, which is like a fake cross chop into an underhook. So the start of this rep is pretty standard for Anton Harrison. Hands are in striking position. Once Campbell loads up for the cross chop, he retreats with the outside hand. He lands his two-hand punch, but there is a little bit too much forward lean here. Campbell gets into his counter, takes advantage of this opening underneath the inside hand and uses an underhook move. It basically just uproots the inside hand and foot and opens up the B gap. But another play that was definitely charted as a loss for Anton Harrison, but probably not charted as a pressure, because you can see Trevor Lawrence was already in his throwing motion. So he needs to get more consistent against inside counters, do a better job of keeping his feet active at the top of his pass set. But overall, it's very clean pass blocking tape for a rookie. Showed a lot of advanced technical nuance, and even though the quick throws gave him a slightly easier job, he wasn't getting a lot of chip help or double teams or anything. He was still one-on-one on an island at a relatively high rate. Run blocking is where you definitely want to see some improvement from year 1 to year 2. At this point, I view Anton Harrison somewhere on the Jawan Taylor to Laramie Tunzel spectrum, just in terms of player archetype. High quality pass blockers, but don't give you a whole lot in the run game. I think overall Harrison really struggled as a run blocker in his rookie year. You want him to creep as close close to average as possible. You watch someone like Laramie Tunzel, who's definitely known more for their pass blocking. It's not like he has a lot of losses in the run game. There just aren't very many positive plays. That's kind of the point you want Anton Harrison to develop to, at least. I do think he was really good as a puller or climbing to the second level. That's definitely the area where he had the most success. He was launching Cleveland's linebackers, just going down the roster list, 5 pancake, 6 pancake, and then a really nice block here on Greg Newsome on this crack toss play. He's extremely athletic, especially in a straight line, ran a 4.98 in the 40-yard dash, which is 85th percentile for offensive tackles. The Jags coaches clearly identified that as a strength, got him out in space pretty frequently, and I think they were right to do so. And you see flashes of what he can do in the other aspects of run blocking. This is a really nice backside cutoff against Ed Oliver here. He's reaching the backside 3-tech, difficult assignment against someone as explosive as Ed Oliver, but he's able to get this play side hand on the play side shoulder and just use pure upper body strength to torque him to the backside. But then you see on this play, Jeffrey Simmons creates a ton of knockback on initial contact, stands him up, makes a play in the backfield. The Jags are mostly an inside zone team, so you don't see them run outside and wide zone that frequently. Overall, I think the results from Anton Harrison were probably below average, but he at least showed potential. I think he has the upside to develop into a solid zone blocker, and a lot of his losses were against some of the best 3-techs in the NFL, to be fair. But he really had a hard time on down blocks and base blocks, any kind of gap scheme, just one-on-one point of attack type of block. He plays with high pad level. He'll be late with his hands and not establish early control of the block. And then he doesn't do a good job of getting his hips under the defender, unlocking that power and sustaining the block. This play, Will Anderson stands him up on the front side, sets a hard edge, sheds the block, and makes the tackle. Right here, DJ Reader gets his hands inside. Anton Harrison's wide with his punch. He's also playing with higher pad level than his opponent. Reader's able to lift him up, lock, peek, shed, and make the play. And then right here, just leaning too far forward, dipping his head into contact, Jeffrey Simmons club swims over the top and gets into the backfield. So the Jags really struggled to run the ball last year. I think you could assign blame to every offensive lineman that played for them. Luke Fortner at center definitely stands out as the worst run blocker on the team. Luckily, he's going to be replaced this year, but Anton Harrison also caused a good amount of negative plays, so you need to see some improvement in that phase. There were at least some good reps in the gap scheme run game. This play against the Browns, I think, is his best. This is incredible upper body strength to get his outside hand underneath the armpit, move him over a gap, and clear open a lane for a touchdown. You see right here on this front side combo on mid zone, he drives the 3-tech into the ground. And then in the first Texans game, he had a couple really nice blocks against 94 Khalil Davis, but I don't think he's going to be playing a whole lot of snaps ideally. So overall, I think you got to be thrilled with Anton Harrison's rookie season. Pass protection is obviously what's most important, and he really excelled in that area. He's probably never going to be a great run blocker. I wasn't very impressed by his run blocking tape in college, and that continued to his first year in the NFL. But if he can just limit the really bad losses and get as close to average as possible, I think you would take that 10 times out of 10.